One really interesting trend that people are seeing now when it comes to creators on those platforms and ways to monetize their content is that more and more creators seem to be pushing into the D2C space. Some more successful, some less.
Yeah.
Is that a trend that you're seeing in the clients that you're working with already, or is that really just the top tier of creators that are going into that direction?
Yeah, you've got like two different sides to that. I think you've got like the people who are creating brands and then going to find creators to become like the face of that brand, which I think is a
Right, you got
really
the Logan Paul KSI kind of setup with Prime, for example.
100%, and I think that's a really interesting area. Then you've got the creators who are already a creator and are looking for new ways to monetize the attention that they've generated and producing products and brands as a way to achieve that objective. I ultimately think both of those can work really well if set up in the right way, and a lot of it's just about the execution. I think the creator-led brands, it's often about like doing it for the right reasons and picking the right product and making sure that there's like authenticity is probably the word behind that. Like you're not just bringing out something for the sake of it, and you're seeing. And I think the challenge for them is like, how do they then build operations that produces consistent long-term growth? Because it's okay having a really engaged audience, but that's going to produce like a really strong launch and spike. But I've seen that play out many times where it's like that doesn't produce long-term scalable business growth. And you really need to build the operation, some of the bits we talked about earlier, and build a real business within consumer to achieve that. So I think there's examples of that being done very well. There's also examples of that being done not so well, where they've not been able to build that long term business. The other side, where go on, did you want to?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I think that's the fallacy that a lot of creators that go into that D2C space then face, that they think being able to create content around a product would be enough to make it a successful brand, which is absolutely not the case. You need to be a strong operator. You have to have a good team around you that is able to support you in the fields that you're not an expert in. And it seems like more often than not, creators are ill-advised to go into it when they're not fully committed to actually building a brand, and they think they can just post on Instagram and that would be enough to drive a D2C brand to success.
Exactly. I also think it's very hard to build a brand off organic. It just very rarely. You have to build a paid distribution engine. That's just the world we live in, and it's often creators often don't understand that world and don't have the right people around them to make that transition, and that's a bottleneck. I think on the other side, where you're looking at brand operators bringing in creators, I think I'm seeing more and more of that. And it's really really interesting to see that play out, like either giving equity or growth shares to someone who then becomes a face of the brand, and provides like either a face, a distribution method, or even some like level of credibility. So we've seen a real rise in like expert-led brands, so where they're bringing in et cetera,
Right.
to provide like credibility to a business. I think that's a really interesting play. Again, I don't think it's a silver bullet. I think it requires a lot more than that to make a successful business. But in a world where we're going to see an increasing amount of content generated by AI, and probably a decrease in authenticity as a result of that. I think having a face that can provide credibility to a product and a proof point that it's delivering on its promise and it's going to provide a good customer experience, I think is a really powerful thing if done correctly. Um, but again, it's like it's not a silver bullet. It requires a lot more than just that to make that a success.